Welcome to the fish tank.
Hey everybody, Fishman here. Welcome to the next video in the mini bandsaw build. This is where we ended up in the last video. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these two wheels and I'm going to machine out the seats for where the bearings are going to go. And then I'm going to machine the bushings for those to make sure everything sits properly. Now if you remember from the belt sander build, this is pretty much exactly the same sort of thing, except in this case, because I suspect there's going to be a lot more pressure that are going to be on these, I am going to support the wheels from both sides. I think I've already mentioned that, earlier on. I just want to relieve as much pressure as possible so I don't wear out any bearings, and not so much with this thicker wheel, because there's a lot more material, but the thinner one, the top wheel, it's quite, I think there's going to be a little bit fragile, so I am going to make sure it is supported from both sides. That way, because I need to adjust everything, I want it to be able to, like I said, stand up to any kind of wear and tear. Also, the other reason for doing this is I'm not sure how much more finicky, I guess that would be the right word, that these wheels are going to be for alignment, because it has to hold the blade properly. So I just want to make sure that I have everything as even as possible and as adjustable as possible. And you'll notice here as I'm putting this seat in, I'm leaving a little extra material. See, it sticks out just a little bit. Actually, you'll probably see it here again. Wow, that's actually a fair amount of oil. I like to leave a little extra material on. Mostly because I suspect I'm going to need to do some fine adjustments. So what I want to be able to do is, well, should be self-evident. It's easier to take material off to adjust something than it is to try and add it on, because you can't. And I really don't want to have to go to the process of machining these wheels all over again. So I leave a little extra material on, and that way, after I get everything assembled and properly adjusted, then I can... if there is a need for any kind of small adjustments, then I can do that then. And the shake there is just to see if the wheels are all seated properly. And then I think I was going through at this point was just thinking about how much material or how thick they're going to need to leave like in between, like where the dead space is there. Just doing a comparison here to see if it's going to be thick enough. Now, I had a comment from a gentleman who thought what I should do is that void space you see in there, to fill it all up. So, in other words, use, well, 1-inch material, and that way I'm not sure what his reasoning was, but there would be less wear and tear and it works better. I'm not sure. And I think actually what I might do at some point here is machine a bushing in that format and see if there's a difference between the two. What I'm doing here right now is machining out the bushings, but what I'm doing from what I learned from doing the belt sander build is I'm making a bunch of nearly finished blanks. In other words, I'm just roughing them out so that they are nearly where I need them to be, and that way as I go along, I tend to sometimes ruin one by either drilling it too quickly or cutting it down too fast. And that way, because I can set up the lathe so I can just do a few single quick passes, I end up with a bunch of blanks and spares, so I don't have to go through the whole process of resetting everything up every time if I make one and then mess that up and have to go through the whole thing all over again. So, learning as I go along. So here I'm going to gradually get the bushings not down to size, just a little bit oversized, and then once I get it to fit on, I am going to, actually another thing I should mention is I'm making all the bushings the same size, and of course the two wheels are different sizes, but I find it easier just to machine the length of them rather quickly, so I'm not too concerned about that part of it. There we go, a little bit at a time, getting down to the final proper size. And then you can see I haven't even bothered doing anything on the ends yet. You can see it wobbling back and forth there. Not necessary at all. I tend to do the final sizing for, there you go, it's on now. A final sizing for the length of that, which is the easiest after I've drilled the holes and everything. I made the mistake once while I was doing this of finishing the end and then drilling the hole and then trying to do the final machining afterwards, and then the walls are just not thick enough to hold the pressure, and I think I ruined or at least marred a couple of them, and then I figured this is better to do it this way. So here, this is for the thinner of the two wheels. You can see I'm just machining it down now to proper length. It obviously leaves a very large neck on it, but that's easy to get rid of. And what I'm going to do here is, let's see, pull it out. And I apologize for leaving the key in like that. You notice what I do is every time there you go. Every time before I turn the lathe on, I have the habit of what I do is I'll spin it by hand once, just to make sure, first off, that there's clearance, that nothing's set up so it's going to bang into anything, and also it is my reminders to make sure that the key's not in the chuck, so I don't end up flinging it across the room, or more importantly into my head or something. So I think once or twice, I tend to, there you go, right there. I'm leaving it in. My apologies for those of you who are professionals at doing this, but I hope I don't forget my etiquette here at any point in time and not do that little spin beforehand. So now, again, what we're doing here is just the final adjustments on you can see how little in the way of void that there is in the middle of this wheel. Hence, I am kind of concerned that there's not going to be enough material. This may be fragile. So what I may end up having to do is, well, the 1 inch won't make any difference. Like the thicker, like the other gentleman said, the fragile part is going to be the neck bit here. And if that turns out to be too weak, I'll have to machine this out of steel. This is aluminum. I don't like using steel in my fish room because, well, there's water everywhere, humidity everywhere, and it tends to rust. Now I suppose I can keep these well oiled and hopefully avoid that problem. But we'll see how it goes along. There may be updates to this as we progress through these videos, and I will, if I run into errors, run into problems, I'll fix them, and we'll go on from there. So here we are, getting closer to the final dimensions. You see there's a bit of a wobble still, and my process here is just to gradually do them as do a fit as we go along, and then machine them down some more until we finally get, like, here we are. Nice and snug. Now, as you can tell, that is way longer than it needs to be. So what I'm going to do now is put the bearing into place. Oh, it's just a little shave there, and notice that a little bit on the neck. Put it into place, and then I'm going to move the bit up into so it's snug. Pull off the bearing, and then just mark where it's going to go. I'm not going to cut all the way through it. So that's a lot of pressure on a piece of metal with this style bit. I could use an offcut, but I found it was easier just to do it this way. Then I'll take it over to my cutoff saw, and I'll cut it down to close to what it needs to be, and then I'll just finish it up. And then, of course, the last step is I need to drill the hole through for the 1/2 inch rod. Now the final trimming, like again, all these are still slightly oversized. The final trimming will be done after it's all assembled and I get to see it all together, just in case one is a little longer than the other or needs to be moved slightly from one side to the other. That gives me that little bit of freedom so that I can make those final adjustments. So there we go, we're going to do an assembly here. These assemblies I've done, well, you get to see one of them. I've done multiples of them. As I put these things together, I'll set up the rod like this here. So there's lots on both sides. Tighten it down by hand, and then give it a spin, give it a wiggle, and basically just fiddle with it for a few minutes and see if there's any kind of play. And then when I'm happy with it, it's just pretty much a done deal for the moment. What I'll do, again, as I said, is after things are all finished, I will do all the final small incremental, hundredth of an inch kind of adjustments that need to be done. But that's pretty good for the first roughed out. It seems to be spinning quite nice, so good enough for this point until at least I get the rest of the build put together. And then what we're going to do here is do up the larger of the two wheels. Now this one has a lot more momentum. I think it's going to be kind of cool. Should have an interesting feel to it. Actually, I think in this one I also showed you one of the earlier stages where, yeah, there you go. It's got a bit of a wobble still. Needs a little bit more of an adjustment. And what I'm going to do is take that off, take it over to the lathe, because I need to do a little bit off of it. Then we're going to, and I think you can tell I get a little tired at this point because it needs to go on the other side. But yeah, it's just wanted to show you that it didn't all happen all at once. There were steps, and many steps in some cases, to get it to the final stage where the bushings and the bearings and the wheels all fit together perfectly, so that it didn't have any kind of wobble or wiggle. And again, like I said right here, just a little bit of extra material so that when everything is finally done, I can just do the small adjustments. Yeah, working with aluminum, you end up with little shavings everywhere, and sometimes they get in the threads of the bolts, and they don't go on properly. And you can see here also, this rod may not be the right length, but this is the intention. I want to have those are going to go through other supports, as will be in the next video, and it'll give me even support on both sides. And this one actually I was really happy with because it spun almost perfectly, so it's kind of cool. So this is getting close to the end of the video now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoy this style of video. If you do, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video where we'll start doing the structural support for all this.